However, good morning. On a hybrid basis, members are asked to note that I have 3 councillors. And we are here.
Is there allowed to see you just have to yell?
You'll have to turn your back to you. Members are asked to note that I have intended that this meeting will be recorded and posted on the website once the minutes have been published. I would advise that we will be utilising the video function available.
Speak up,
Thank you, Chair. I will go through the introductory text. So good morning and welcome to this meeting of the Helensburgh and Lomond Area Committee, which is being held on a hybrid basis. Members are asked to note that the Chair and Vice Chair have agreed that this meeting will be recorded and posted on the website once the minutes have been published. I would advise that we'll be utilising the video function available in Teams. However, if the use of video causes a reduction in quality, we may revert to using audio only. You may wish to switch off your video at the points when you are not contributing to the meeting. Members have received guidance on the operation of a Teams meeting and should refer to this guidance if required. I would advise members that as previous, the chat function for this meeting has been disabled. Any member who wishes to indicate their intention to ask a question or make a comment should use the hand up function for that purpose. The Vice Chair and I will monitor these requests. If any member wishes to raise a point of order during the meeting, I would ask that you do not use the hands up function, but instead verbally state point of order, and the Vice Chair will then ask you to speak. I note that there may be some members joining the meeting by telephone today. As is usual practice, the Vice Chair will ensure that everyone has an opportunity to contribute. For the sake of clarity, I would advise that observers and members of the general public are not permitted to speak at the meeting other than a public question item. All microphones should be muted and should only be unmuted when you're invited to speak. For those members joining by telephone, pressing *6 on your keypad will unmute your connection and allow you to speak. If any members lose connection or if any technical issues during the meeting, please alert myself or my colleague Julianne Small, if possible by email or instant message, so that you can make us aware of this issue. A short adjournment may be taken to try and resolve the connection. If a quorum still exists, then the meeting will continue to proceed. If a quorum does not exist, the meeting will require to be adjourned. I would also advise that if a vote is required, this will be undertaken by the clerk, myself, by way of calling of the roll. Thank you, Chair. That concludes the introductory text.
Are there any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies this morning from Councillors Irvine and Patterson.
And will you take the set around?
Happily, Chair. On hearing your name, members, I would very much appreciate if you could confirm your attendance. Councillor Campbell-Sturgis.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Corey.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Morning, Stuart. Present. Thanks.
Councillor Harvey, you were on mute.
Sorry. Morning, Stuart. Present. Thanks.
We cannot hear you. I do see you though. Councillor Howard.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Kennedy.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor McGuire.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Mulvaney. Thank you. And Councillor Penfold.
Good morning, President.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I do believe that there is an issue with the audio of people calling into the meeting. If I could ask for a second here.
Is there a microphone function that can use that as a loudspeaker? If there was 2 seconds. So
Councillor Penfold, could you give us a wee song perhaps that would help?
I don't know if you want me to sing, but
No, nothing. 2 seconds.
Can you hear me, Stuart? Can you hear me?
Years old now. It's just people refusing to use it. They're used to it.
Councillor Penfold, how are you this morning?
I'm good. Can you hear us?
Hey, thankfully, yes.
Yay.
I'm not sure that my blood pressure could have taken much more than that. Thank you very much.
Stuart, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. Thank
Okay,
you.
that's great. Thank you.
Do we have any urgent motions?
We do not, Chair. No.
Any declarations of interest? We move on to the minutes of the meeting of Helensburgh Lomond Area Committee on June 11th, pages 3 to 10 on the agenda. Do we agree these are correct?
We can move on.
Oh, we move on to public questions. You will be able to do it. Just see if it's done. Before we introduce public questions, in response to several questions that have been submitted in advance, I wish to make a statement regarding the Indian Council over the past 10 years have successfully invested over £20 million in Helensburgh Waterfront, important community infrastructure, including the new leisure centre, new car park, cedar fences, and recycling pier. This administration and indeed previous administration appreciates there remains a great deal of public interest in the final phase of the jigsaw. And things have moved on considerably in the last few weeks, following the decision by Policy and Resources Committee in August to select a sole preferred developer in forest developments. All of the submitted points from today's public questions will be answered in the coming days. We will also be updating the information and frequently asked questions page on the Council's website about the waterfront, and so the correct narrative is shared as widely as possible. I do, however, want to reiterate 3 points. Firstly, our town centre is important to us all, and we want to get this important site right for the viable and economically sustainable development. There has been an open process where we received several offers from retailers, fast food giants, hotels, and the community. We have assessed these bids through an agreed process and have proposals that are considered to be the most advantageous in terms of deliverability, risk, financial outcomes, and community feedback. Secondly, we are aware that views both for and against this development have been expressed in the wake of the recent announcement. And in this context, it is important to note that the Council's focus is on ensuring that waterfront regeneration ultimately delivers benefits for Helensburgh as a whole. Community feedback has played an important part in reaching the stage we are now at, and there have been opportunities for community involvement at various points. In response to previous community feedback, the master plan was altered to reduce the retail area and building line was pulled away from Hyde Street to protect views. We are listening, but the preferred bidder's proposal is not developed to a stage that matters can be taken forward to a planning application. Officers are working with the developer on that. and more detail will be shared when it's available, and again, community feedback will be welcomed as part of the planning process. Finally, the committee acknowledges that the skate park is interlinked to the waterfront. I wanted to reiterate that this committee confirmed in December 2023 that there will be a skate park at the waterfront as a backstop. This has been confirmed with Forest Development. However, and in supporting ambition of growth or expansion, this committee asked that 2 alternative locations were to be explored at both Kidston Park and Hermitage Park. Officers are currently looking at that and will report back to a future area committee once in a position to do so. So for clarity and in conclusion, the area committee recognise the public interest and welcome the questions which will be answered by officers in the coming days. Wider information will continue to be shared via the website as it becomes available. And when updates and more details available, that will of course be shared widely. All questions raised today around the waterfront will be welcomed and minuted. However, it will be my intention that these are referred to the officers for a fuller, more detailed response. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As you have intimated, there have been a number of questions submitted, and I would suggest that we take these in the order in which they were submitted. Can I invite Stella Kidloch to speak to the committee today? I don't believe Stella is in attendance, Chair, so with your permission, I will pose the 2 questions on her behalf. They read, I have concerns that the committee in approving the sale of land on the waterfront were not provided with full and honest representation from the consultation, and that there are continuous attempts to overrule and quash the voice of residents. The sale of the land was suggested to include space for the skate park. It's now clear officers have been manipulating the process to find the best site, whilst the community and its young people are repeatedly advising what they believe is the best site, the waterfront, yet this continues to be ignored. Why did elected members accept evidence from an outdated retail spending from 2017 to be submitted as part of the report? And why did they not question the poor consultation numbers and lack of transparency from the consultants used to produce this report? Why has there been no full community consultation on the best site for the skate park? The second question reads, I'd like to know why did apologies, Chair, that is an education related question. So if we can pause and possibly ask the members if they wish to respond, or indeed confirm that there will be a fuller response sent to
I just make the point that they're asking why. Sorry, probably can't hear me. I can shout louder. Sorry. Sorry. I think you asked the question goes to the root of why we're not listening to the community on where the skate park is going to go. We haven't decided where the skate park is going to go yet. It could go to the waterfront as a backstop, as the officers previously spoke of, or it could go to the Kidston Park or the Hermitage Park. That decision hasn't been made yet. I know a lot of people seem to think it has, but it hasn't. So it's worth noting that that's not yet decided. But that might be helpful, sure.
Last night, I was speaking to the owner of the Beachcomber restaurant in Kidston, and I know she wouldn't be very happy with what's on there. The residents as well, they would be very happy. And if the forest developers have said they've got an area within the waterfront, I don't understand why we're looking at this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. If we move on to the second question, I'd like to know why did over 1,300 pupils at Hermitage Academy start the year by being issued with 8 pages of printed paper giving GDPR notices for video and photo permissions and 2 for data confirmation. The authorities currently pays for licensing and use Google Forms also from expressions as the agreed communication method. These two digital solutions are available and are not being used. Printed paper is a waste, and where pupils don't return it, they receive a second set printed out to take home. We're seeing committees discussing budgets, spending cuts, while this obvious waste of budget, not to mention the actual paper, is astonishing when the digital solutions are there. I can only speak to what was issued at Hermitage, but I would assume it's authority-wide. Counting up all these little areas of waste are what is eating into overstretched budgets. I'm looking for a commitment that the authority will stop the needless printing of forms to parents. This is only required where there is an exception agreed. Hopefully, with all services removing such waste, we'll see small savings adding up. Chair, apologies, Vice Chair. On receiving this, I contacted colleagues within education, and they responded that annual data checks are a vital aspect of data protection compliance and are issued on paper as they are pre-populated with information that parents are previously supplied to use. This is to facilitate the process rather than them having to completely write everything out again. Unfortunately, Messenger 5, our main tool for communicating with parents, is unable to handle that level of data. The service are looking at a parent app that could resolve this issue and are in discussion with IT to plan an implementation program. We would like to invite the committee if there are any comments to make.
Chair, just a simple point, and the simple point to me would have been probably to find out the facts first. Ask the school exactly why they're doing it, and that explanation would have been found. And I would like to think that our school would use a variety of different mediums and channels in terms of communicating with parents and with young people as well. So to me, the question's been fully answered. And I do appreciate the officers getting the time to provide a very full, comprehensive answer. But to me, if the questioner had asked the question to the school, I'm sure that information would have been provided. But
I can just briefly add, I'll try and check. I know from personal experience, one of the other problems around GDPR is that sometimes a wet signature is required under the requirements of Writing Act 1981 Scotland, meaning that sometimes we actually need someone to physically sign a piece of paper, even if it's later then scanned into a computer system, it still needs physically signed, which is a bit of a misnomer in law, but it may well be the school have opted to do that for that very sensible reason that they don't get pulled up for not having a signature on paper. So I think the amount of paper in question is probably not great.
Thank you. Next question.
I would like to invite Jill Simpson, the development manager at Helensburgh Community Hub, to ask her question.
Thank you, committee. I am here in my role as the vice chair of the area community planning group. I just wanted to ask if the area committee had noted that a short-term working group of the area community planning group has been established to explore how a community wealth building can benefit Helensburgh.
We will look at that.
Sorry?
We will look at that. Thank you. Want to ask any questions on that? Actually, perhaps they are actually on that working group.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there are certainly more questions this morning, Vice Chair. Could I invite Peter Brown from Helensburgh Community Council?
Chair, there are a number of questions, Mr. Brown, possibly make sense for you to.
Thank you.
We're getting vote.
Morning, councillors. Very much. Thank you. Yes, you can hear me. Excellent. First question may well have been answered, but I'll ask it. Can the chair clarify who our Galloway council are intending to sell the Pierhead site to? Is it Forest Developments Limited, as per the council press release of 18th August, or Forest Group, as in the council's Q&A on their website?
we need to double check that, because obviously somebody's typed the wrong name in at some point, so I'm going to check which is the right one.
So councillor, you just said forest developments in your statement.
Forest development then, but I will double check just to be sure.
Okay. I would have thought that the committee would have known who they said.
Chair, can I maybe suggest that Peter, you know, puts all these questions in a order, because officers will respond to them in due course, and that's what the clerk outlined at the beginning.
So that's possible, councillor, but I was hoping that the councillors would know the answers to these questions. These questions are addressed to the chair.
Mr. Brown, the chair did mention forest development within her statement, but she said that she would double check, so
Thank you. I assume that answer will be forthcoming. Thank you. Secondly, can the chair advise whether Helensburgh Council obtained an independent valuation of this site, and if so, which company provided the valuation, what was the valuation, and when were the area committee councillors informed of this valuation?
These answers will be given.
Sorry, they were given.
All these questions will be answered, but not at this meeting.
So we've got public questions time, but we're not getting
I'm
answers.
not reading your questions, and they will be, well, you want the proper answers, you want everything in. So that's the way we're deciding. Sorry, yes, we have made it clear that the questions will be heard by the committee. If they've got any questions to ask you for clarification on your question, that will be done, but you will get written answers after the meeting.
So, councillors, and this is addressed to all of you, my questions are addressed to the councillors. So I'm asking when the councillors were informed of this valuation. I would expect to answer that.
As I said, you will get the answers.
Chair, can I just say a point? It's policy and resources committee that did that decision. So not all the members around the table today are necessarily on that particular committee. So, you know, I'm just making that point that that was the decision. But I think the chair's made clear that all those points will be responded to, and I'm quite happy for officers to give you the process.
These questions that are being asked, like we're given an opportunity to give yourself questions that could be asked at this meeting here. Could these not have been provided about a week ago so that we could have definitive answers at this point in time? This is a surprise to us, and I don't know about evaluation, and certainly not Fiona doesn't.
So councillor, I provided these questions at 12 o'clock on Friday morning, good afternoon in fact, and did ask to Julianne and Stuart that they be circulated to the committee first. And also I would have expected potentially that council officers, if they were necessary, could have answered by now. So
I would ask my colleague to double check if there was a request there for it to be circulated to the area committee. If that is a feeling on our part, then I apologise. As Councillor Mulvaney and Councillor Edward have both said that, in fact, I will actually reiterate all questions raised today around the waterfront will be welcome and minuted. However, it would be the Vice Chairs and I dare say the area committee's intention that these are referred to officers for a fuller and more detailed response.
So Stuart, that's appreciated. I will reiterate my email on Friday said, please find below a set of questions which I'd like to be put to the area committee before their meeting on Tuesday. So I will continue reading the questions and I will ask for full answers, but these really are directed at the councillors. There's a second point as to your point, councillor, as to why these weren't raised a week ago. We only get the agenda, the public agenda for this meeting 3 days before this meeting. And we, the community, I'm sure, were expecting that the waterfront might well have been on the agenda with some further information. These questions, therefore, are asking in the absence of any other information. So the third question is, can the chair advise of when the area committee councillors agreed budget for the disposal of the Pierhead site and how much was that budget? This refers to the combined cost of external consultants, including Alston Young as marketing company, Darton B3 Architects, in providing an illustrative design, Colliers for the retail survey update, and Ryder Architects for the community engagement process. Should I expect that that will be answered afterwards?
It will, yeah. All that kind of information on it.
So did the area committee councillors agree a budget at some stage?
Just carry on. All these things will be answered in full.
I-
They
I-
will be discussed at the DNR or at other. All these things will have been discussed at the Policy and Resources Committee, of which I am not a member.
Only 2 members.
Yeah.
And one's not yet.
Yeah. So all the intricate detail of where we've given information and decided information and made decisions on behalf of the council will be included in your reply.
Yeah, question. People on mine. I was on policy on resources, and I will be quite blatantly honest. I do not remember all of the details off the top of my head. You're asking for specific numbers on specific dates in a public forum. I'm not going to speculate. Oh, I think it was 110 on the 12th of May. I can't remember all of those details off the top of my head. With the greatest respect, I'm aware that this is the first time I'm hearing these questions. I was on that policy and resources committee that took the decision 3 weeks ago, was it? 2 weeks? Yeah. No, if I'm not going to remember their details, and councillors that weren't even on that committee and will only receive the papers in their email, I'm not going to have these answers. I would be much more comfortable, and this is why I think the Vice Chair's readers, to have these answers put to you in writing at a later point once they've been thoroughly checked. Because if we give you the wrong answers, that's just going to cause speculation and conspiracy theories and nonsense. And on top of that, would be irresponsible. So the responsible thing to do is say, thank you for the question. We'll come back to you with a proper answer rather than 110, I guess, maybe, perhaps. That's not responsible. We've got to do the right thing by everyone present. We will get the answers and they'll be in the public domain. So then you can disseminate them to the council or anyone else, whatever the plan was. Thank you. I think that's important to know.
Thank you, councillor. I think it would be better if they were already in the public domain, with the discussions having been appropriately open, with the council statement, which is that there is a presumption to openness in all the meetings.
You ask questions, not comments.
Well, I was here to ask questions. I was hoping to answer it, actually.
In our minutes, not added to the public input.
Yes.
The councillor's answer was not private papers, which this was.
That's a requirement of law, though. You can't break the law. We are required to obey the law.
That's not one of my questions, so I can't comment on it. Each bid was scored against 5 criteria, of which criterion 4 was, in quotes, community feedback based on the community engagement process of June 2023, as signed off by this committee, the area committee, in September last year. The Ryder Architecture report on the community engagement process, which only 83 people participated in, concluded that there was, in quotes, no consensus on what was wanted on the site. Can the chair advise how this report was used to score this criterion, therefore? Did they simply award 5 out of 5 to all bids, as they did for the community council's bids? And what was the score assigned to the winning bids?
That is another thing. Another thing that I do not hold in my head, and you will be supplied with the details as promised after the meeting.
Question 5. Is the chair aware that this site is still at risk of flooding? The seawall that was built for the leisure centre was not built as a formal flood defence. Therefore, SEPA will consider each new building on the site on its own merits. And as SEPA said at the pre-planning meeting for the leisure centre and in the written statement, the increased footfall for any retail on this site would cause them to regard it as a more volume increase.
Yes, we will, as I said, supply that information to you as we can.
When the swimming pool was built, that part of the ground was actually raised. When the new swimming pool was built, that part of the ground was actually raised. I think it was 2 metres. 2 metres. 2 metres. Like 2 metres to stop.
I'll refer you to SEPA's answer for about the leisure centre. After the area committee approved 2 bidders at their private meeting in March this year, did the council give any commitment to those bidders? If the council had not selected any of those 2 bidders, would there have been a penalty to the council, and were councillors aware of this? something you were saying.
I was exactly the same. I'm not a lawyer. You will need to properly response to that. It's certainly not dropping myself into the middle of a legal debate.
And further, can the chair confirm that the council has followed the Scottish Government's 2010 regulations on disposal of land by local authorities, specifically paragraph 12, which says their duty includes, in quotes, being open and transparent in transactions, and in quotes, demonstrating responsiveness to the needs of communities, citizens, customers, and other stakeholders.
Contrary to public opinion, the council tries its very best to stay within the limits of the law at all times. But again, the full and definitive answer to that will be forthcoming.
Then I have a further detailed question about the retail survey, which is that the category report, which I have here, which is what Collier said they used as the definition of the retail space in the town, does not actually allow you to define what the floor area is of each of the shops. It provides a number of the category of each shop, so number of chemists, charity shops and supermarket, and the total floor space. It says nothing about which chemists or the floor areas or where each Boots is. So it's not possible to ratify the floor space in the ground or to cross-reference it as Collier said they did. Now, I would ask if the chair agreed that the Collier's retail study update doesn't provide an accurate representation of Helensburgh's retail position, leaving Helensburgh's local businesses vulnerable to retail developments on the waterfront.
I can't respond to that because I don't know the answer. It was discussed deeply at the time, I believe. And again, you need to get the full answer with all the details from our offices.
And finally, on the 12th of September last year, this committee was briefed by officers about, in quotes, items that are considered to be major risk factors to the council regarding Heritage Park, which included the following. Quote, the skate park is located in a suitable spot in Helensburgh. If located in Heritage Park, a full suite of documents are required by the National Lottery Heritage Fund, including a heritage impact assessment undertaken by a specialist consultant in historic parks, health and safety risk assessment, statement from planning department, survey of park users and stakeholders, the local community and friends group to gauge public opinion, an updated and fully funded management and maintenance plan explaining how skate park will be maintained over 20 years, an updated pavilion business plan, statement of impact on Green Flag Award. This report is legally binding in order to draw down funds and not be liable for clawback. The Council's Environment Development and Infrastructure Committee meets this Thursday, and the officer's report for that committee says the risks regarding the potential location of a skate park in Heritage Park have been deemed acceptable, and subsequently a letter has been drafted for consideration by National Lottery Heritage Funds. Can the chair explain how the risks that were addressed to this committee have been mitigated, particularly the risk regarding public opinion?
No, because I wasn't in on any of the talk. I do know there have been discussions and talks and surveys and all kinds of things going on. I wasn't in on them. I will be waiting for the report, as I'm afraid you're going to want to do.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Just to assure you and members of the public that the responses to all your questions will be sent out as soon as humanly possible to you, and also made available online.
Thank you, Chair. We do have several questions from Watling. Chair, with permission, I will read the three questions. I thought I was loud enough. Apologies. Apologies. In relation to the supermarket development, why does Helensburgh Council feel that a retail survey carried out in 2007 is still relevant to the current and future needs of the area, given A, this was before the improvements of the core project, B, before the building of Waitrose, now Morrison's, and C, the effects of the pandemic on retail shopping habits. Second, has Helensburgh Council carried out a traffic study in relation to increased shopping traffic at the East Clyde Sinclair Street junction Are there any plans to change entry/exit to the leisure centre/supermarket car park? Have Police Scotland been asked for their views in relation to the significant increase in vehicle movements in Clyde Street/Sinclair Street, potential bottlenecks and road safety issues? Third, with the fact that the new supermarket development is earmarked for use by the co-op, can Argyll Council confirm their plans for the current co-op site, especially how such plans will impact parking in the town, both for shoppers and rail users? Has ScotRail been consulted in relation to the impact on station access and passenger numbers both during any redevelopment and subsequently? That is the end of the questions from Ed Wortley. Thank you, Vice Chair.
These answers will be given as promised earlier. I do want to say though that there is no decision on which supermarket might be interested in this.
Thank you. Sarah Davis from Helensburgh Community Council and Chair of the Helensburgh Lomond Community Planning Group advised that she would not be in attendance this morning and asked that I read questions out on her behalf. Good morning. My question is a follow-up to my question. My questions are a follow-up to my questions submitted to the previous meeting on the 11th of June 2024. This is detailed in the minutes. Why is the proposed development of a retail site in the waterfront not on today's agenda? There have been a number of very important decisions taken since the last meeting, yet I see no written update or report. These decisions, which were taken in private and are of great interest to the residents of Helensburgh and Lomond, but yet again, there is no report or update. Secondly, I note that 3 months later, the Community Council has received no reply from any of the councillors on this committee to our letter raising concerns about the process of selling off the site for redevelopment. Our only reply came from a council officer who is not accountable to the community as elected councillors are. Third, in the absence of any replies, we wrote to the council leader seeking a meeting before any decisions were taken. Sadly, his reply was that he did not have time to come to Helensburgh. Fourth, you are, I am sure, aware that the announcement of the preferred bidder following a closed meeting not available to press or public has not been universally well received in Helensburgh. The Community Council has received many questions and representations on this issue. Many of these we are unable to answer due to the lack of publicly available information. There were more than 120 residents at our August meeting eager for information. We thank our MSP Jackie Bailey, Councillor Howard and Councillor Kennedy for attending that meeting. However, they too had little information they could share. The lack of transparency is concerning. We are told there will be benefits to the community, but not what they will be. The apparent secrecy is for many the most concerning issue. Since that meeting, a digital petition to stop the supermarket has gained more than 2,700 signatures in less than 10 days. A paper petition is also in circulation. For many of those signatures, the main concern is the lack of consultancy and transparency. There are questions at the end of this statement, Chair. I believe this is set in the context. I note that the Scottish Government website, the key roles of an elected councillor are representing their ward, representing and meeting with residents and community groups within their ward, and dealings with the issues they raise. My question, therefore, is when will you, our elected councillors, be meeting with Helensburgh residents to answer questions on this issue? With this, will this be through well-publicised surgeries, a public meeting, or will there be a drop-in sessions? There are many current local issues raised with us as the Helensburgh Community Council. These include, along with the waterfront, the regeneration of the pier. More than 500 residents turned out to support this cause on a Sunday morning. The survival of the Tower Arts Centre and Cinema. More than 600 residents turned up to an engagement event just last weekend. The closure of the cafe in Hermitage Park with no notice overnight, and the long-term future of the waterfront skate park. None of these appear on today's agenda. Will they be on the next one? apologies, Chair. As well as answering these for those at today's meeting, I would request a written reply explaining clearly how you will be meeting with and representing residents' concerns, questions and views. Also, how you, as our elected representatives, will be taking those views to our Helensburgh Council. I look forward to seeing the waterfront and some other important issues I have touched upon being raised in future, not just at public question time, but on the official agenda, hopefully at the next meeting in 3 months. Thank you.
Lots of questions there, none of which are answerable because we haven't got the answers yet. We will be disseminating information as and when we receive it. There are talks going on which are private. There's things you've not been told because of legal requirements of privacy. And as things clear and decisions are made or options are discussed, you will know about it. Just not right now because we don't have the answers yet.
Thank you, Chair. Can I invite Cameron Foy?
Right, Chair, before we move on to that, can I very quickly just ask officers, would it be possible for officers to, and really it's just you with any other officers on board, would it be possible for you to outline why certain papers are restricted and held in private? Because I think that's something that a lot of people don't seem to understand. We are legally required to hold certain meetings in private. We cannot, it would be an offence and we would be liable for dismissal as councillors if we were to go talking about private matters in public.
Certainly it is. These are not, meetings held in private are not a decision of our Helensburgh Council, nor are they the rules of our Helensburgh Council. It is enshrined within legislation, and it is abundantly clear that anything that is of a commercially sensitive nature must be, there is no choice, must be considered in private. There is, the council do take an approach is if there is something of a sensitive nature, how do we ensure that that can be considered in public? It's certainly not the default that it will be considered in private. Everything is done to make sure that everything is considered in public. However, when something hits the criteria that is enshrined within the Access to Information Act, it must be considered in private. Thank you, Chair. Is Cameron Foy in attendance this morning?
Yes, I've submitted my question in writing, so I look forward to reply. But I don't know if there's any point in raising it here because obviously I'm going to get the same response that the rest of the.
Thank you, Mr. Foy. I would appreciate if you would actually read your question so that it can be minuted in terms of openness and transparency.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, as reported in the Helensburgh Advertiser, the future of the waterfront development is potentially tied to the existing co-op supermarket, or Simple Street, East King Street, which the council also owns and currently leases. And the chair say whether under the terms of the lease, the current leaseholder can end lease early, or whether the council had any control over who the lease could be transferred to, and therefore any influence over whether its future would be retail or residential. What's the council's own long-term plan for the future of the Simple Street, East King Street site of the roads, and will it make public timescale for the redevelopment of that site? I think we hear a lot of openness and transparency in local government. The community is very engaged in this topic, and we would like to see some responses to the questions we receive. And I feel I'm wasting my time at this public question today because we're not getting any answers. But we look forward to the answers in writing when they eventually do come.
Thank you, Chair. I can maybe just offer my comment on that question, Cameron. To me, that's a really good question, an interesting question. And it's one that there's clearly no decision on just now. In terms of the decision that the Policy and Global Resources Committee took, it was to award the preferred bidder status to a party, and that's what we've done. In terms of other sites that may be part of a domino effect, that is clearly not part of any decision at this point. But to me, the points you raise are interesting ones, because, and I think that's something that at some point in the future members will have to look at in consultation with the community as to, for example, whether that site is best suited to being continuing as a retail development, or whether that site essentially lends itself to housing, or whatever. It's quite a significant site within the town, and I think that's one that bears quite close scrutiny as to what the long term.
It does have an impact on the waterfront site because of the retail space.
It's not. I'd argue that the transaction is not connected. The decision that was made by PNR was on a single issue. Yes, there may be impacts wider, and that's what I'm trying to say. I think where should we go in the next 20, 40, 50 years on that side? I don't know, because I think you could have an argument that it was simplistic just to look at retail, but you could have a very good argument round about residential, for example, because there is more need for residential accommodation. But I would say that none of those arguments have yet been explored, because they're not really relevant to this decision that's in front of the council. But I think looking ahead, as we've heard from this morning, the area community planning group have already got a short-lived working group looking at what the next iteration of area plans are. The council are coming along with area plans, and already started in other parts of Argyll and Bute, and will come into Helensburgh. And I think that's one in terms of long-term development. What are we doing with those types of sites? And I think that's a question that will need to be posed, and one that will need to be answered. And I would suggest that there's a variety of different answers that you could arrive for in terms of that site. So I'm trying to be helpful. I know this morning, we've had a number of questions. Some of them are technical, some of them are legal, and officers will provide all that detail. But I think in terms of that particular site, we can all speculate what would be the best long-term use in terms of the town for that particular site. And members will have a variety of different views. The community will have a variety of different views, but I don't think we're probably at that point just now where we need to consider that. That is something for the future, I would suggest, and will probably feed into area plans. And hopefully that is helpful in some regard, Cameron.
Well, I think part of the issue about the waterfront development is that the council is saying there's a need for additional supermarket space in the waterfront because town centre doesn't have enough. You're now saying that the co-op site could be redeveloped for residential use. Then you're taking away retail space.
What I'm saying is that the master plan and the local development plan, the last two iterations of the local development plan, have effectively looked at the waterfront site as a mixed use development. So that position hasn't changed over many, many years. What happens in other parts of town, well, we'll just have to wait and see. And I suppose that's what I'm trying to say, that you could have different visions of what you see in different parts of the town. But certainly from my point of view, or other members' point of view, nobody's got a concluded view on that, because we haven't thoroughly explored it at this stage, because it isn't really germane to what we're looking at just now.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Yes, Chair. A question from Catherine Smith. Is Catherine Smith in attendance? No. Catherine has sent an email which reads, at the meeting tomorrow, I would like a response in writing by email to the following question. Why is the skate park being limited to 350 square metres when the revised and adopted master plan includes a large skate park in the waterfront? That this would see no safe approach and runoff spaces. Again, Chair, is that something that the committee would wish to respond to. The next question is from Jackie Hood. Is Jackie Hood in attendance today? Jackie Hood has asked why, when the skate park has repeatedly, when the skate park project has repeatedly stated that the waterfront is the preferred location, they would rather a smaller skate park there than a larger one out of town. Are the council continuing to pursue alternative locations? Could the council also clarify why Hermitage Park is now being considered as an alternative location when it has been deemed unviable 2 years ago? Thank you. Again, Chair, is there something to respond to?
Yes. Sorry. Does anybody want to comment on that? That's another one that the officers will be.
Thank you, Chair. And the last of the pre-submitted questions is from Fiona Baker. If I can invite Fiona to the table.
I'll just stand up. First of all, I'd like to say that the inability or perhaps refusal of elected members to be able to answer the many questions put to it today raises considerable further concerns about the effective representation of the residents of Helensburgh Lomond and joined up thinking and community wealth building. Which obviously everybody agrees. To my question, in light of the recent announcement by our Argyll Butte Council, unanimously supported by this area committee, of the selection of a preferred bidder for the sale of Helensburgh Waterfront for development of the supermarket, please could the committee answer the following and also provide a written response subsequent to this meeting. Why have the council decided to sell the waterfront rather than lease it? That's the question.
I can certainly respond. Sorry, I think I probably should, but in terms of the options, in terms of the options, you know, there was certainly in my tenure when I was involved as policy lead on this, there was no definitive view as to whether, you know, a lease or outright sale and capital receipt would be, you know, the best option. And essentially, through the variety of bids we had different, you know, financial models that were used. I mean, you can argue from a revenue point of view, and as a former policy lead for finance, revenue is the key thing that we require, you know, from a sort of budget point of view. You know, one-off capital receipt is good, but revenue is potentially much more attractive from a council perspective, because it's, you know, it's continuous. So something that you've got a lease over 20, 25 years or whatever it may be, you know, can be more attractive than a one-off capital receipt. So I don't think there was anything, you know, if you spoke to officers, and I'm sure that the response you get is there was no predisposition to one or t'other. It was effectively down to what the various, you know, bidders tabled, and, you know, one particular bid, you know, they you know, didn't have a significant financial offering. But so it came down to the individual bidders, and then, you know, how that was assessed, and then how was that measured. In terms of the preferred bidder, my understanding is that the council officer will continue to engage with them round about the financial model. So, you know, in answer to your question, there's no predisposition to one or t'other. It's whatever would have been to the best advantage in terms of the Argyll Butte Council.
So, Councillor Mulvaney, if they're still going to discuss this, does that mean that it still might be a leased site rather than sold site? As I think many people consider it as a public asset of Helensburgh, and once it's sold, anything that happens there can only be controlled by planning. Whereas we would hope, if it's owned by the council, that the public might have a little bit more say, which is what we're all here for, in what actually happens on that prime waterfront site in the heart of our town that we love and are so concerned about.
I would imagine that will be a commercial discussion that's had between, you know, council officers and the preferred bidder, and I'm sure all those various options will be explored. So as I said, you can get a capital receipt or you can get a revenue lease. You could have a joint venture, for example, where council takes some of the risk. You could have a variety of different, development models. And I'm sure that is something that the officers will be further exploring with the preferred bidder. But you can't really have that, until you've got a preferred bidder, and then you start to look at what the various options are. So I'm sure that members will get updated around about that in due course when officers have had the discussion. But I'm certainly not privy to it at this stage.
Thank you. So I'll take it from that it's not decided whether it's been sold or leased. That is under discussion.
That's my understanding.
Second part is, has an external commercial market valuation of the waterfront site been carried out? And if so, what is the valuation? If no market valuation has been undertaken, why not? I know what the answer to this will be. We'll come back to it.
Okay. I mean, the officer will formally respond to all those points, but generally, can any of us genuinely believe that if we were selling our house, that we wouldn't go out to a variety of estate agents and valuers and get a valuation? So to me, it seems absolutely untenable that the council would do the same. So I'm sure that they will have had a valuation, they will have had professional advice in that regard, because you wouldn't do otherwise. But I mean, officers will formally respond to you, and I'm sure that they will support that line. And I can't believe that I certainly wouldn't sell any property without getting a range of valuations. I'm sure the council is exactly the same. We've also got an in-house team that can offer expertise, but potentially you might go out to the market as well and get that validated by other expertise. But I'm sure officers will come back with a much more detailed and fuller explanation that I can give. I'm just sharing my own view, my own opinion on that.
Yes, I think everybody would expect there to be an external commercial market valuation. And we look forward to having the details of that. There's some of £1 million, which has been around since 2011 or so, for the waterfront site. See, as many people in the town are commenting, seems a very small number for such a prime site, and is the deficit on the swimming pool building. So hopefully all of these things will be clarified. The next part is, has an external commercial valuation recently been carried out for the land at 54 Simper Street, East King Street, owned by the council, and leased for the specific use of a supermarket and car parking for 200 cars, which is currently leased to the Co-op supermarket within 2083. The lease value in March 2000, when the Co-op took over, is recorded at the Registers of Scotland in title deed DMB 16528 as £11,300,000, a tad under. If a recent valuation for the land and or the lease has been carried out, what are the current market values? You've already addressed this in responding to Cameron Foy to some degree, and said that this comes to joined up thinking. Is if the Co-op are going to support and welcome the proposal of the supermarket on the waterfront are going to move there, what then happens to the Co-op site, which belongs to the council? What, and the second with this question was the rateable value for the existing Co-op site is £312,000 per annum. Can the council advise on the anticipated rateable value for the proposed supermarket on the waterfront site? So this is joined up thinking, and if the Co-op are going to move, what's going to happen to that site? Do we get another supermarket, which many people want? Because it doesn't sound like there is going to be another supermarket. But I'm sure that the committee are not able to answer about commercial valuation for the Co-op site or what the rateable values anticipated for the waterfront are.
One second. If I can come back on the rateable value matter, this is purely because in a previous period in elected office, I viewed the store and got to sit on the valuation board in another place. The rateable value of property is decided by, not decided by the council, it's decided on by the joint valuation board. So they will not make a valuation on a potential site, they'll make a valuation on an actual site. So unless you've got the crystal ball to give them, they won't be able to do that. So there's no possible way we can answer that question because no one will know until it's done. It's like asking me how much your house will be worth once you built it. But if I can say just the reason why I wanted to come in with the Vice Chair's forbearance, you were saying at the very start about us answering questions. I would be very happy to answer any questions that I have answers for. But at the same time, if you're asking detailed legal technical questions, we have a responsibility under law as elected members to give you an accurate response. If we don't have them details in front of us, because you're literally asking the question right now in front of us about a detailed technical document that was presented maybe 3 years ago, when maybe some of us weren't even in this elected office, we have to go back to council officers and get them responses. We are duty bound to do so, just as we're also duty bound to obey the law in terms of confidential meetings. So we're kind of, our hands are tied here. And I utterly understand the frustration. This is also frustrating for us sitting here saying, we can't give you that answer. We can't. We're not allowed to. We're bound by our, office, and we're bound by the law. So I understand your frustration, but please understand it's frustrating for us as well sometimes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. A lot of the questions that have been asked today are not all technical legal questions. A lot of them are questions that the residents of Helensburgh and Lomond would expect their elected representatives to know the answers to. You've been involved in the decision making. This is a unanimous decision of the area committee to develop a retail, to have a retail development. I know it's in the master plan. The town has been saying for the last 30 years we don't want a supermarket. I think the response to so many of the questions asked today has been extremely poor and a stonewall and kicked into the long grass. The answers will come eventually, but I'm extremely disappointed that you haven't been able to answer many of the questions that have been asked this morning.
I think in fairness, they'll be in the next 2 days. We're not looking at months or weeks, are we? I want them officers. Can we get a question and response time on that? Will it be a few days, or will it be dogs and weeks for these answers? Just to keep clarity.
This particular project falls outside my scope, but as far as I'm aware, the officers are currently working on the questions that have been submitted. I would guess it by the end of this week, but again, it is my responsibility.
Chair, may I say something? Yes, so in response to Fiona Baker's comment, Fiona, you're one who likes detail, okay? And therefore, it is important you wait for this detail to come by what's said from the council officers, people actually handling the project day to day, who are the executive, all right? So we have to go by that. So you can get the answers, okay? Get the answers to your queries. I mean, we understand, and I know the work you've done has been tremendous in other areas of the time, but we're all trying our best to get the right answer, okay? So you've got to bear with us. You've got to understand the process, which my colleague councillor, Captain Matt, has just made quite clear about valuations. There is a process. We cannot break it, or we'll be in front of the Standards Commission, and then we'll be accused of all sorts of things. And I'm not prepared to have that to happen to me or any of my colleagues, no matter what party they're with. Okay? So please understand that we're doing our best, okay, in this work. We all have other jobs to do. We're volunteers. Obviously, I know we get paid our salaries for the time. No, but just let me finish. If you want the detail, then you'll get the detail, as our clerical officer said, in due course and in due time. Okay? Thank you.
Could I just add that our officers have posted a page on the council website, which they have given me assurances they will update as and when all the information becomes available. It will be updated if necessarily on a daily basis, but only when information is available, because we don't want to get any confusion, any more confusion than there already is. Keep an eye on the website and you will learn a lot more as it goes. And are there any more questions from the public?
There are no further submitted questions, Chair. However, I would suggest that you invite those in a period of response.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question which I'm sure I won't be able to get an answer to? Terribly sorry, the gentleman sitting at the back on the right.
Councillor Matt Campbell says, can we get this man a microphone, by the way, just so that everyone online can hear as well? Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask you a question about something you said earlier, so I hope you can answer that. So earlier on, you said we've got to do the right thing by everyone. Can I ask you to clarify very specifically who everyone is?
You want me to do the mic? I'll just shout. I hope everyone can hear me. In terms of, I think I was discussing by means of, what was the context of what I was saying there?
Well, we were talking about the waterfront bid.
Well, I was talking specifically as an elected member. My job is to represent the people who elected me, and in that role, act in the best interests of my constituents, but also the council. And the council isn't the 5,000 employees plus that work in direct services, not the thousands of other people that work through the council. It is the council, as in the 36 councillors, and then the entire organisation. It's like a deck of cards that rests on the populace, the people. We are elected to serve, so we have to do the best we can. Probably not the best answer, right? Yet. We have to do the best we can in terms of the decisions that are in front of us for the populace, and in terms of our office for the council. So
I see. And what is the weighting between the one council member's view and one person in Helensburgh's view? Are they 1-to-1, or is the opinion of a council member given a higher weighting?
I think the question you're asking is really one around the philosophy of representative democracy. I mean, you elect someone based on their opinions and views, and perhaps party membership if they're a member of a party, or their stated political views, etc. And then they act to represent you, but you also have to be responsive to the needs of constituents. So when I was elected, this wasn't on our election leaflet, so I asked about it because it hadn't happened yet. So I have to listen to the people who elected me, but also I have to act in the best interests, and sometimes the best interests don't always marry up with the views that are coming forward, because quite a lot of times people will say things like, well, I've elected you, just fix it. There's no magic wand. Sometimes you can't.
Right, but you said you weren't elected on the basis of the waterfront bid, though, so that's not relevant at this point.
I'm saying that was like I'm trying to illuminate that was something that wasn't part of my electoral material, for instance, because it hadn't happened yet. So it's something that came up after I was elected. So I couldn't have been elected on my views on that project because it's a crystal ball.
Right.
But you're elected on your opinions as an elected.
So we have now at least 2,700 signatures saying they don't want a supermarket, and that number will grow. So when you said we've got to do the right thing by everyone, does that include the 2,700 people? If it doesn't, who does it include? If it does, then where is the number of opposing people in excess of that within the council? In other words, when you said you've got to do the right thing by everyone, what does that actually mean?
In terms of, and I'm sure that other councillors will want to give their views on this one as well, but in terms of when we have a decision put in front of us, it isn't always quite as simple as people don't want a supermarket, therefore I can't vote for this. We have a decision that says we have to choose this, or here are the consequences that could amount to, for instance, millions of pounds worth of other costs or damages or lawsuits or other outcomes that, based on what decisions you have in front of it, have to be made from. So you can either choose this decision or that decision, or do something else, but that will have consequences. And as an elected member, sometimes you have to take the best decision that's in front of you, even if it's not the best thing you might want.
So if as long as you know best, you can ignore any public.
No.
This is not a debate.
I'm not finished, would you mind? I have asked the question. I'm just finishing off now. Will you let me finish, please? I'm just going to finish. No, I don't want to be interrupted. Thank you.
Point of order. Please show respect to the chair. This isn't a debate. It's up to you to ask your question and to get a response.
I've been in the process of endeavouring to withdraw an answer from the councillor, so I've not strayed from that topic.
And can I just point out, just for the record, that there are 2,000 signatures on the petition, but there are 15,000.
Including children and old people who are not capable of signing.
Well, I think that's. I'll give the microphone back. I have to say, I think it's quite extraordinary
Chair, if I can come back on this, Chair, I'd be happy to meet with the gentleman afterwards, because really these questions are for the whole committee, so I appreciate that he asked me specifically, but my apologies, Chair, for going back and forth there. I will discuss the matter with the gentleman offline. Apologies, Chair.
Thanks very much, Chair, for giving the chance to ask a question. Guys, I'm glad I'm not sitting at the table because I couldn't do your job. Your job is to be able to hear people like us who genuinely have concerns. I worry that today was all about confrontation. How, as elected official, did you ever get to the stage where 3,000 people almost are losing confidence in you? And because there's a feeling of opaqueness, lack of clarity, and lack of transparency. Now, I fully understand you got empty non-disclosure agreements with the private parties, with confidentiality agreements, but we don't have confidentiality agreements with you as elected officials. You have to read the room, read the population, and frankly, Chair, what you said a minute ago about 3,000 people, there's 12,000 people in Helensburgh was a shocking statement. 3,000 people clearly demonstrate there were issues that are not being addressed by the council. We're only looking for clarity. Thank you.
The lady over there was also on, I think she was before me.
My name's Liz Descato. I think my question, actually, the first one has been answered. However, before I read it, it was Councillor Mulvaney stated that the Policies and Resources Committee decided. So the decision was obviously made before anybody was let know anything. The question was, why was the bid process conducted in such a secretive manner? I understand that obviously the law side now comes involved in that. Even at the short list stage, the names of those being considered were not disclosed. And more concerning, the announcement that a preferred bid had been accepted was just that. There was at first no mention of who had been awarded the contract. That fact came later, as did their plans for the site. I have to say, what goes on behind closed doors and why, as this is not for the benefit of the people of Helensburgh. That was my first question. Secondly, just looking, you, Councillor, there talked about the area. We are actually talking about the Helensburgh area and not the whole of Argyll and Bute. But if you do bring into Argyll and Bute and sporting facilities, Oban has a population of about 8,500, and they have a huge, massive sports centre with various activities can be played. Loch Gilphead population is only around 2,300, and they have the Mid-Argyll Sports Centre, and their sports centre has facilities for 4 badminton courts. We can't even play badminton in our sports hall because the ceiling's not high enough. So basically, also earlier on, there was a question about education. And I want to know, has anyone been to Hermitage Academy and asked those children aged 11 to 16 in particular, who seem to cause trouble around the town at various places, what they would like in Helensburgh? I've done my own little recce around the town, and I've spoken to people at the skate park, and I've spoken to visitors in the town recently since the last meeting, and none of them would ever dream that you'd put a supermarket on the seafront. It is basically and should be used for leisure, and that's where my point remains. There's nothing in for 11 to 16-year-olds at all for them to go to. You would never dream of putting a skate park in the park because they can't be seen there at all, what they're up to. The skate park on the seafront is an ideal and the best site for them. And maybe if you were thinking of putting anything there, you could actually try and put a drop-in cafe somewhere for them, that they would have somewhere to go to and relate to each other. That's the end of my questions. Thank you.
Chair, just to, if I can respond to the first question, I think we have touched on that throughout the day, and that any decisions that are commercially sensitive will be taken in private session, and that is governed within the Information to Access Act. Thank you.
Sorry, which act is that? 1972. The Information Access Act of 1972. If members would like, I can share it on screen just now. No, that's all right.
Chair, can I just pick up the point that the lady raised? You know, it was Policy and Resources Committee that decided that was the right place for it to go in terms of decision making. The council's got a tier of decision making. Things sometimes go to area committee, sometimes go to full council, sometimes go to Policy and Resources. And Policy and Resources, you've got a range of different members from different areas and different administrational positions and all the rest of it. But just to go back the cycle, you know, a little bit, you know, there have been many papers that have come to the area committee over the last probably 3 or 4 years on the waterfront development, all of which have been in public. In fact, if you looked at the council decisions, probably I would estimate probably about, you know, certainly in excess of 90, maybe 95% of papers are actually in the public domain, and actually the private papers that are relatively low, and that's something that actually the Audit Scotland used to compare across Scotland as to what different authorities did, and you know, were some actually having more in private or exempt session compared to others. So that information, you know, is pretty reliable. But the point is that we've had many discussions over the period of which those papers will have been in the public domain. So, for example, in terms of the scoring criteria, so before we got to the bidding process, there was a scoring criteria developed that took in a number of different things. That was agreed by this area committee as to what that scoring criteria would be. And then officers were basically instructed to go and apply that scoring criteria. And that's what they did. But in terms of this thing round about, you know, the supermarket on the pier, well, let's be clear. You know, the master plan, which is 2012, was predicated on the basis that it was a mixed-use development, so you would have leisure and you would have commercial. The local development plan, which is probably around about 2016, 2018, again, that was that same view. So the entirety of the waterfront would be a mixed-use development where you would have leisure, i.e. a swimming pool, leisure centre, and you would have a commercial element as well. That commercial element not being a single supermarket that was maybe the case, you know, maybe 20 years ago, but that would be effectively a commercial development that maybe had, you know, 3 different units. And the development plan, local development plan, that went through statutory consultation again, went out for community consultation, and to which we had many representations round about a whole variety of different things, whether it's the release of potential green belt, whether it's land for development sites, and is now in effect the 2024 local development plan, again reiterated after all that consultation and being approved by government ministers, that site that we were speaking about today is again for mixed development, which is, as I say, is leisure, which has been built, and the other element, which is the second phase, which is obviously the non-leisure or commercial element. So that has always been the case, and that's been consulted on over many different time frames and you know, and then different documents. But just to give you a reassurance that, you know, this decision, you know, hasn't been made, you know, in secret. There has been a process, a very transparent, open process round about how do we select the bidder, and there's been a very transparent and open process about what designation is on that land. And as I say, that has not changed. And if you have a look at the local development plan, you know, the current iteration, the previous iteration, that site has always been, you know, designated as, you know, a mixed use development. And so that has never changed.
It's been designated as that, but 3 times it's been turned down.
No, I think you're misunderstanding. So in the past, there has been specific proposals or plans or planning application for what has been, if you go back 20 years, a large scale supermarket, a single supermarket. So instead of having what we had in the past, the 1970s pool, there would be a large supermarket on that site and nothing else on the site, and that was rejected. Now that is not the proposition we've got today, because the local development plan that was developed over the last couple of iterations has basically said that that entirety of that site, that waterfront site, would be mixed use development, and effectively that is what the council are according to. So in phase 1, we developed the swimming pool and leisure centre, and that's what we've got now. And there's always going to be the second phase, which was the potential commercial development. And again, that commercial development was always very clear. It would not be a single supermarket, and that is not the proposition. It would be potentially with, you know, 1, 2, or probably 2 or 3 units, and that is still that was always the proposition. So no large scale supermarket, but so that has always been clear, and that's what the local development plan has been consulted on over the last 2 iterations. So probably the last 10 years, that has always been the land designation for that particular site, and you can go and check that designation yourself today, because that's exactly what it is.
At the risk of further offering myself on again, the sacrificial lamb aspect. As elected members, we're voted in to make decisions that are in front of us. When I was elected 2 years ago now, the decision to build a supermarket on that site had been taken, as Councillor Mulvaney outlined, probably a decade before that. Would you say 8 to 10 years? That land had been rated, so no one said, "Hey, Matt, what do you think should go on there?" They said, "Hey, Matt, here's 2 proposals for a supermarket. Which is the preferred bidder? This is the one that officers suggest would be most prudent. This is the one that's not suggested as most prudent, but it's your decision to vote on." That's the decision that's put in front of me. I don't get to vote on, you know, do I want to build something else there? Do I want to, you know, turn it into a play park? Or do I want to put anything else? I get the decision that's put in front of me that is through that ratified process based on hundreds of previous decisions that have gone through these committees, that have come to the area committee. I can't go back and change what happened 10, 12 years ago. I can only vote on the things that are put in front of me today. That's the nature. I have had many constituents consult with me over these decisions. That's the thing, but I can still only vote one way or the other. I don't get a chance to rip things up and start again. We are not given godlike powers, very sadly, I'm afraid. It's one of the things they tell you just after you thought you've been elected. You've been elected by the way this constituents not talking. That's I'm afraid the nature of representative democracy, though. You get the decisions that are put in front of you to vote on. You don't get to go back and change everything in the past 10, 20 years. And you know, myself and Councillor Mulvaney, I think it would be fair to say today, we disagree on quite a lot. We are from completely opposite ends of the political spectrum, but we're both elected to represent our constituents and do our best by the Helensburgh area. Now, I might not agree with all the decisions that his administration made 10 years ago. Was your administration 10 years ago? Yeah, I was part of it. 10 years ago. 10 years ago, but then decisions were the representative electives at the time made the decisions democratically. They're the decisions they made and they stand. We can do different things in future, but we can't change the past. And that site was outlined to be a supermarket 10 years ago. So with the respect, I understand a lot of people are angry right now, but the decision was taken 10 years ago. In public, this isn't something that suddenly happened overnight that this was going to happen. The latest decision is simply the final sort of selection of a preferred bidder. The previous statement.
Well, you stand representing this area on Argyll Council, and basically you're being told what is be done by our Barnum Council, not the local.
No, I'm telling you that the 2 or 3 options that are in front of us are the only options that we can take legally. We have to take a decision that is most prudent. So if I'm given 3 choices and one of them costs £10 million and would cost us all a lot of money, one of them costs this much but would deliver something, and then one of them actually provides a benefit to the council, you have to take the right decision in front of you. That's all you can do. You can't make things up as you go along.
Who is giving you those prerequisites to decide on?
The decisions are based on reports from officers based upon previous decisions and outlined processes. Sorry, this is going into debate here. My apologies, Chair. Sorry, Chair.
Representatives powers on hand by the council as opposed to the local committee.
I'm too fond of debate. Sorry, Chair.
Sorry. Are there any more questions? Thank you, Chair. First of all, I have questions on 2 matters today. One is on the tower project to restore keep our cinema. And as a bit of light relief, and to give the councillors a chance to do something that they're not doing this morning, I'm going to ask you to make a decision. I'm going to put to you a proposal from the tower group that have got a very tight deadline to submit their next part of their business plan. If all 10 members of the area committee would sign up to a letter of support to go to the tower cinema group so that they can submit that with their bid, which is to be done by the 11th of November. I know some individual councillors have indicated they will do that. I think it would carry more weight and look more impressive if all 10 of you who are representatives of this area did so. But that's a question, and you can answer that because it's not for officers to answer. So can I have an answer, please?
I would ask all the councillors if they would do that. And I have done that. And they are on the whole of things.
Just read your email this morning here and I would intend to sign up, yes.
Yeah.
I'm happy to
Already
sign.
signing.
Well, that was an easy one. They made a decision. Right. My other questions are mainly prompted by what I've heard this morning. And I have to say it's truly astonishing, but keep those comments for later. First of all, the first question I have, really I'm trying to elicit information which cannot be found in council papers because they're all taken in the exempt section. So I'm asking the councillors to find out this information through the officers and return to me in writing, please. In 2007, the full council of Argyll, that was 36 of them, agreed to fund a new leisure centre for Helensburgh, and around the same time awarded the CORD project, and that consisted of 35 million, with 7 million going to 5 areas. Bute and Cowell, that's one of the 5 areas, agreed to use £2 million of that money to fund the rejuvenation of the Rothsey Pavilion. In the intervening 17 years, the council has failed to allocate sufficient funding to the Helensburgh Leisure Centre to fund the capital costs. The reason that you are short of £1 million, you keep telling us, is because the budget for the leisure centre overran and you're £1 million short. It's nothing to do with selling the land. It's your statement, your policies that have indicated we're £1 million short for the leisure centre. So you've known that for 17 years. In the meantime, Rothsey Pavilion has returned many times to the council for additional funding. Some of which have been involved in that process now tell me that those bids to Rothsey Pavilion, which has a population of 7,000, now is in the region of £20 million. Additional funding was given as recent as the 27th of June by the full council, again in the private section, but it was agreed, according to the minutes, to release additional funding to Rothsey Pavilion. My question to members, brackets, officers, we seem to have a democratic deficit today. If members and officers can bail out Rothsey Pavilion, why have our 10 elected representatives not presented a similar case for Helensburgh Leisure Centre to the full council to fill the £1 million black hole, which is forcing the sale of the seafront land for retail, as it is the most lucrative sector at the moment? That's my first bit. Could you also tell me, earlier on today, I heard the skate park on the seafront described as a backstop. Well, that's jargon I don't understand. So could the members who use that terminology this morning please explain to me and others what is a backstop? Also, the council interest on the co-op site, you should have declared that before you went out to procurement and before you went to consultation, because you have an obvious declaration of interest by owning the co-op site on Sinclair Street. Everything is interlinked. The capital receipt that comes from selling, if you do sell, not lease, the seafront development, the capital receipt, is there still a council policy that declares that those capital receipts have to be divvied up in the other areas as well? I'm sorry, I'm going back to when I was on the council. I don't know if that policy has changed, but I need to know that, because you will be in receipt of a capital receipt for the front. Also, could you tell the community the petition that many people are signing, and I'm sure many more will, when it's presented to the council, what will you actually do with it? My experience of petitions being presented to the council when I was lucky enough to be an elected member was they were taken down to the provost office and put in a cupboard and were never seen again. So I would like to know what the process is for the full council to consider the petition that we're all busy signing. I have another page of questions, but I'll keep them. We can submit them later. But I have to say, I have never seen such a democratic deficit in work as I've seen this morning. And some of you seem to be of the opinion that there are two councils. There's one council that does all the work and makes the decisions, and then there's councillors. Well, I'm sorry, the rule is officers recommend, councillors decide. So the buck stops nowhere else, it stops the elected members.
Would anybody like to respond?
Thanks, Vivian. That's a very detailed number of questions. Just to pick up the first thing around about the swimming pool project. As I say, that was my policy lead remit when I was in administration. And in terms of some of the facts there, that project was not over budget. You intimated that it was over budget, and it certainly wasn't over time. In distinct comparison, quite rightfully, you make to the likes of the Rothsey project, which is obviously running over budget and over time. The £1 million, where did that come from? So when the council were looking at the original business case for the waterfront, then effectively allocated into that was around about £1 million of a capital receipt that would be available from any opportunity in terms of selling the land, or it could actually be converted into a revenue if it was actually leased as well. So that was always part of the model. So you went back into council papers, you would see that there was a provision in there, and that provision has never changed. So that's always been effectively in the business case for. So it's not a case that the project was running over budget. That's always been fundamentally part of the business case for creating the new Helensburgh swimming pool and leisure centre. That's always been the case. And in terms of the, I think you referenced the retail development. As I said, probably repeatedly today, that site, the entirety of that site, that waterfront site, from Cloud Street right up to the end of what was the old car park before it was redeveloped, that was always a mixed use development. And by that, to be clear, that always included an element of leisure, i.e. replace the 1970s pool with a brand new pool and leisure centre. And that always included what is properly termed, commercial development. Now, I know you can equate commercial with supermarket. They're not entirely the same. One can be a subset of the other. So commercial can be much wider than a supermarket. So, for example, we could have had a variety of different bids in for that site that were in consideration that were non-retail uses that could have been a variety of different things. So that site, from the master plan in 2012 through the local development plan, through to the local development plan in 2024, that's been signed off by the Scottish Government, has always seen that site as a mixed use development. So everything that the council has done in terms of setting out the criteria, assessing the bids, has been consistent with that. And your final point round about who's accountable. Well, to be frank, we're accountable. I'm an elected member. I've been an elected member for 20 years. I stand by the decisions I make. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you'll always be the most popular, but I'm happy to be able to defend what I do. And so I was on the Policy and Resources Committee, and I voted for the paper that was in front of us in terms of selecting preferred development. I'm quite happy to justify and stand by that decision. Now, as a politician, sometimes you need to do that, and I think Matt Campbell Sturgis painted the picture of what representative democracy is about. It's not a referendum on every single decision. Sometimes you have to take the tough decisions, and you really want to take the community with you. Genuinely, you want to take the community with you, and you want to try and demonstrate the benefits and the values. And I certainly believe that over the last 20 years, every decision that I've been involved in, has been to the benefit of this town. I remember when we did the court works back in 2007. I think you and a fellow questioner mentioned as well. That was particularly traumatic for the town, for its residents and for its businesses, and it wasn't universally popular. The whole design of some of the aspects of it, widening the pavements, narrowing the streets, that wasn't necessarily the most popular thing at the time. We now look where we are, and I think we've got a town to be proud of. And from that decision, we got significant investment into the town. We've got restaurants that would have never probably considered opening up in Helensburgh, but did open up in Helensburgh, and we've got further investment in the town. So I think that's the right decision. So I'm quite comfortable to defend the decisions that I'm party of, and I think that this decision is the right decision in the town. Now, potentially you may disagree with me, and others may disagree with me. And that is their right. But I think in terms of the waterfront, I think our approach has been absolutely consistent. And for those that accuse us of secrecy and a lack of transparency, well, go and have a look at the documents. Look at the local development plan. Look at what it says. It says mixed-use development. Read what that means in planning terms. I'm not a planner, but they can tell you what it means, and that's never changed. So I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with where we are in terms of the decision-making process. And sometimes, as politicians and local representatives, we won't be the most popular. And then sometimes Councillor, Councillor Vivian, you were a councillor in the past, a one-time councillor, and I'm sure at times you were popular, and I'm sure other times you were unpopular. and that's sometimes what goes with it. Well, yeah, I think that's life, isn't it? That is life. But hopefully, I'm just trying, to demonstrate that, where I am in terms of the decision-making process and how that's based on some of the information that's coming before us.
Take one more question.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Sorry, we're also running out of time. I am here on behalf of the Psychopath Action Group today. Not a question, you'll be pleased to hear, more of just a wee statement. So Jackie Bailey, Paul Kennedy and Matt Campbell Sturgis attended a public meeting with Fergus Murray from the council on 28th of August, where over 125 members of the public were present to encourage us to show their support for the psychopath. Two highlights were the public support for the project, and the other was that we had landowners present and happy to communicate about the project, as they have received bad press in the past as stakeholders. Jackie Bailey encouraged everyone present to urge the elected councillors to prioritise this psychopath within the appropriate budget that the new monies have been allocated to. By that I refer to the change in the funding process. I think you're all familiar with. Yeah, great. The Psychopath Action Group would like to ask that money is found for the ecological studies next summer. These have held up the completion of the technical design for some years now. We ask that planning is done over winter to communicate with landowners so that they are aware of what access is needed and that work goes ahead on the land where access is freely given, which is the majority of the land along the route. And I'll leave it there because we're short of time. It's just if you could take that into account when the psychopath comes up on the agenda. Thank you.
Yeah, I will confirm that I think we're all in support of finding the quickest solution in Waterfront. And hopefully we'll get somewhere further when we get to the report this evening. Have anything to tell on?
Thank you, Nick Willoughby. I'm quite new in town and I'm quite pragmatic, just got a couple of quick questions. As I was parking in quite a full leisure centre car park, I did wonder, has there been any recent parking survey done by any of the bidders? Because it's not clear to me where people go to the supermarket and park. And it's all about it being done recently, post the leisure centre being open. So that's question one. Question two really is just about the sense of, as you walk through that site, you really do realise that that is the face of Helensburgh. And it really is the face of Helensburgh. And I think there's a duty of care on the council to make sure the face puts its best foot forward. And I do sense coming to this meeting that part of that is a respect for the residents. And I am staggered that questions submitted in advance to this meeting, there weren't any answers, not just detailed answers, because detail takes time, I get that, but any answers. The face of Helensburgh in that site deserves a bit more respect than that. And the third question is really about mixed use. There's mixed use in retail and the supermarket. Anyone who works in retail knows that unless you've done work post-COVID, when you look at the decline in footfall, particularly in supermarkets, any data set you're relying on that is pre-COVID is simply not accurate. Particularly if you're going to close the supermarket, likely one will close if one opens. You're really just switching sites. You really want to switch sites to the face of Helensburgh. So the question is, has any post-COVID retail analysis footfall study been done that this decision has been based upon? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Again, I'm afraid I have to say the officers will respond. We don't keep transport orders every single day.
Well, what I was going to ask you to cover it in your question there, but I just want to reiterate the fact that I'm very concerned about what looks like the lack of joined up thinking in terms of the existing co-op site which council owns and this site on the waterfront where it looks very likely that co-op is simply going to shift, and why it's not a decision to be made in isolation as you seem to be saying. It seems to me disingenuous to claim that the two are not linked. They obviously are completely linked, and I would like that to be acknowledged. And if you're saying they're not linked, then that shows up a very short-term, alarming way of the council operating.
Thank you for that. We believe that there has absolutely no decision taken as to what kind of supermarket it would be, whether it will indeed be co-op.
Chair, can I refer you to ask Councillor Mulvaney to address that? He seemed very knowledgeable. It's a good point with the interlinking. I think you raised that earlier on in one of your comments. Apologies for getting the chair. I'm trying to refer you to see if you can lend some expertise on that.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose at that point I was happy to speculate about what could be a variety of different developments. And I think that answers your question. I'm sure officers will confirm in writing that legally, the decision on the waterfront is the decision on the waterfront. That there's no connection or the wider appreciation of potential consequence, because I suppose some of that is you don't know what the potential consequences are, but I'm sure officers will confirm that. But I think in terms of any site that the council's got an interest in going forward needs to be part of the area plan process. And that is something that the council have already started. They started just over 7 or 8 months ago, looking at area-based plans and going out to our communities and asking, what are the next iteration for Helensburgh? Because over the last probably 10, 15 years, we've probably completed all the significant major infrastructure work that you would probably expect in terms of, the new secondary academy, the civic centre, the leisure centre, this development in terms of, the final piece of the waterfront, Heritage Park, cord works, all those type of things have been done. And the question is, where next? Should the council put their energies? And I suppose I was suggesting that site, which obviously is a site that the council own, is one that you could look at. If you look at the scale of the site, you look at the footprint of that site, where it occupies, that could lend itself to a variety of different developments. And I think you could probably make a strong argument for every single one of the developments, whether it's potentially residential, because we need more residential housing in Helensburgh, and there's arguments that should be potentially more town centre based as opposed to greenbelt based. So there's an argument there. So I think that I was suggesting that is something that the area-based plans will need to pick up going forward. Is it, and I'm sure officers will confirm, is it part of the decision-making process in terms of the waterfront? Then I don't think it is. Now, I'm happy for officers to contradict me and say, well, actually, it is part of it, but all the information I've seen, it's not part of the decision. The decision on the waterfront is the decision on the waterfront. The criteria is there on the waterfront, and the scoring of that criteria was done in line with what the area committee agreed. So, in a sense, that's where we are. But yeah, as I say, that site and other sites like it will need to be looked at as to how do we develop them in the future, and what will the use be, and what will the needs be.
I won't speak long because I've spoken enough, I think, today. But can I just ask in future that one of the questions specifically references, and you did as well, in fact, quite a few people says, if we are provided questions in advance to or officers are provided questions in advance from members of the public, can I ask in future, will you receive copies of them as soon as possible prior to the meeting? Because some of the questions here, I haven't seen these questions until today, and they're asked at the time. I would have been able to go and prepare an answer myself, notwithstanding the fact the officers would have to provide an official answer with the legal and technical details required in them. I would have been better prepared if I had seen those questions in advance, if that would be possible. If someone submitted them, notwithstanding that people can come along and talk anyway. But if they're going to submit questions, can we get a copy of them, please? I think that's for the officers, not for yourself.
Can I just add something as well? Just to back that up, I'll be very interested to hear the answers to a lot of the questions that you've asked, because I don't know. I want to defend the law council. I don't know these answers. We haven't been privy to getting the information. Certain officers from the council and certain people in the inner circle of those that get extra money for it deal with these decisions, and we get to hear part of it. Now, I don't know why it was done in such secrecy, some of this. For example, the preferred bidders, or the bidders, has that been released, the information? Not yet. There's still a discussion, yes. Yeah, that's right. So, but we get very snippets more than you do. So I'll be very interested to hear a lot of answers to these questions as well.
Okay, that brings us to the end of the questions. One more.
You say they're not linked, the two sites, but have you taken parking into consideration? Parking in Helensburgh is really hard, and you're going to take a lot more parking away, whatever you build on the front. Well, you are, because where are we going to park? If you've got a building there, you've got less parking. And then if you do sell or lease the site at the co-op, then whoever's going to buy that is going to want the car parking if there's going to be houses. So that would be taken away. So surely you need to think about parking. Surely you need to think of them as being linked. You can't think of one in isolation. As you say, it's really short-term thinking. And I would have thought more of you that you would have done that, quite honestly. Question.
Thank you for the question. Parking and all these considerations will be part of the planning process. There will be parking involved, of course. Okay, that brings us to the end of our ruling session. We'll take a short break now.
Before you adjourn, very quickly, can I just get confirmation on one of the points that the retail site development will not remove any parking from the waterfront, because that space is already fenced off? But no, because the parking spaces that are currently in the waterfront are not part of that plan. They're part of the fenced off area that you can't park. If you're parking in the fenced off area illegally, you can park in the fenced off area illegally. But that's.
Okay, we're going to take a short recess. Well, we'll come back. 26 minutes.